Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about 5 cultural differences that I think are a little bit subtle and whether or not I am adjusting to them. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Patricia Brooks. I'm an American living in the south of France and have been since 2018. And I help people who are ready to start the next chapters of their lives living and thriving in a foreign country, find that confidence and courage and work through that self-doubt so that they can finally start living and thriving in their dream country. And on this channel, I talk about my life in France, about moving abroad, and how to dig down deep and find that grit so that you can live the life you know you are meant to. And today I'm talking about cultural differences. Now, the first cultural difference on the list is something that I don't think I've adjusted well to. And that is that Americans are more bubbly than French. The French are more reserved. And I was reminded of this during a trip to my doctor's office. It was the second time that I'd been seen by this doctor. And I don't know what I had said, but I thought it was funny. And I laughed a little bit. And he looked up at me and he looked like I had insulted him. And I thought, oh, does he think I'm laughing at him? I can't remember exactly what I said, but sometimes I'll say something and I'll have a little laugh or whatever. And it's just normal. It's a part of my personality. But I really think he thought I was laughing at him because he wasn't used to that kind of lightness in, I guess, such a formal interaction. I experienced that one other time with another doctor, with an osteopath here. I've been seeing for a couple of years now. So if I laugh now, that's okay. But during the initial 1 or 2 sessions, I laughed and he kind of was shocked. And I think it was because he thought I was laughing at him, that he just wasn't used to that. So that is one cultural difference that I have not adjusted to too well. And I don't know that I ever will. My personality is light and bubbly and I like to laugh. So that's the first cultural difference that I wanted to share with you today. The second cultural difference has to do with numbers and how the French write their numbers. They write them different than Americans do. And I remember initially, first couple of years, if I was filling out a form or writing down a number for somebody who was French, sometimes they would have to examine the number and then they'd look up at me and they'd ask, is that a 7 or a 1? Is that a 9 or is that a 4? And vice versa. If I had somebody write down a number, sometimes I would get a slip from the post office saying they have a package for me and they'd say it would be there after a certain date. And I couldn't read the numbers. I was like, what is that date saying? It just looked like a different numbering system altogether. Now, however, I just filled out a form to sign up for my DELF exam, which is in about a month's time. And I had to, write my date of birth. And I think that was the only number I had to put down. Oh, my address. And I was writing numbers like French people. I was putting a slash through the 7. My 1 had a little extra line at the front of it. My 9s were a little more rounded. And it just feels more normal to me than it did in the beginning. It doesn't feel so forced. It doesn't feel like, oh yeah, I've got to remember to do this. It's kind of coming naturally to me. So that is a cultural difference that I am adjusting to nicely. Number 3 has to do with numbers as well. I recently went to my bank to transfer my account from the Perpignan branch to the branch in my little village. And it's been a long time coming. I tried to have it transferred 3 years ago, and I was told, no, I couldn't do it because, well, you have a business bank account, and my banker in Perpignan was a business banker. But they have a business banker here as well. And a few days ago, I went to the bank and they helped me to transfer my account. And my new banker started the process, and there was a two-factor authentication with that. So a code was sent to my cell phone, and he asked me to read the number off of my cell phone. And I did. And I started off 8, 3, and then I stopped. And then and this was in French, and then I read the numbers 2 by 2 instead of 1 by 1. 83, 55, 21. And I had started, I stopped, and the banker noticed it was like something that was unusual because the flow of the conversation was pretty smooth. But with the number, he noticed my hesitation. And so afterwards, I explained to him that, well, in America, I would just read these numbers off 1 by 1. 8, 3, 5, 5, 2, 1. And he thought, oh, okay, that's interesting because, yeah, if you had read it off to me like that, I would have struggled to understand what you were telling me because I'd be expecting it done in a different way. And so I've adjusted to that, obviously, because I caught myself realizing that would be the case. When I first moved to France that first year, I was reading my credit card number off to somebody on a phone call. And I remember reading out that 16-digit number 1 by 1. And it was the hardest thing for the French guy on the other side of the line to understand. And I thought to myself, I'm reading these numbers off 1 by 1, and I can read the single digits well in French. It wasn't like the 80 or 55. I could read those 1 by 1 well. But he couldn't understand 1 by 1 well. And in his not understanding, my shoulders went back. I'm like, oh, I'm getting good at this French. I'm speaking these numbers so fast, a French person can't even understand me. It wasn't that. It was I was reading them 1 by 1 and not as 2 numbers. I find that quite amusing. But it's a subtle difference, but it's a cultural difference nonetheless. What cultural differences have you struggled with when you've been traveling or when you've lived in a foreign country? Let me know in the comments. Now, number 4 is how formal the French are. And this has to do with writing a formal letter. Now, I've probably needed to use a formal ending on a French letter in the past, but I never did it. I resisted, I was polite at the end, but I never could pull myself to use the words that are typical at the end of a French formal letter. Je vous prie d'agréer, monsieur, l'expression de mes salutations distinguées. Right? That to me, when I first read that, was like, what in the world is that? What does that mean? And it just felt so foreign, so formal, so not like me. It's kind of the other side of the, my bubbly side, right? It's kind of like, oh, it's too stiff. It just didn't feel good. And so I could never bring myself to write that. Well, because I'm in the process of studying for this DELF exam, and there is a high likelihood that I will have to write a formal letter with the closing, I am learning that. And so as I'm practicing, I'm writing it out, and it still feels forced to me. It doesn't feel like it's coming natural, but it's what I need to do. And so I'm doing it. All right. So that's the 4th cultural difference. And the 5th cultural difference has to do with what the French call faire la bise. Faire la bise is the kisses that you will see French people do when they meet each other. The kiss on either side of the cheek. And this was something that was foreign to me in the beginning, but is no longer. And in fact, I actually like it because I like what it signifies for me. And that is acceptance and friendship. I was on my morning walk a couple of days ago and I ran into a woman who I would see on my morning walk quite frequently, especially in the warmer months, because she's out tending her garden. And I would stop and she'd stop what she was doing and we'd have a conversation. And just after Christmas, she invited me into her home for an aperitif, and her husband was there and we had a nice conversation, right? And that felt like, okay, yeah, this relationship has gone to a different level, from acquaintance to a friendship. And that felt really good. Well, when I saw her in my walk a few days ago, she took off her glasses and we faire la bise. And it felt good because it felt like, oh yes, this is my friend now. We're friends. I feel accepted. I feel like part of her network. And after, moving to a place where you didn't know anybody and getting to that place where you have those friendships and those connections, it's a really powerful experience and feeling. And I think I owe so much of that to the fact that I have taken the French language seriously. Now, it was something in the beginning that was really fun for me, and it still is fun. It's still a lot of work to get to a place where I will be able to pass this exam next month, but it's the reason that I'm in France. I wanted to become fluent in French, and it was a challenge that I really wanted to take on, and I have. So those are 5 cultural differences that I don't think I've spoken about before, and they're a little bit more subtle than the others. Do any of those surprise you? If so, which ones? Let me know in the comments. Now, making a move abroad is a big undertaking, and you might have questions about what it's like to live in France. And these videos probably are helping you out with that, but you might have some questions that you want to ask me that I have not addressed in these videos. And if that's the case, I offer a 30-minute information session where you can pick my brain. You can ask me questions about my experience in France. And for those people who have already had one of these sessions with me, I think they found them quite insightful. So if that interests you, I'm going to put a link to that in the description. Currently it's $75 for 30 minutes. And I look forward to having a conversation with you. Now, if you're struggling and you would like to work on your mindset and build that confidence and courage, I offer a complimentary discovery session to help understand where you are in the process and if our working together in a coach relationship could be helpful. And I'll put a link to that in the description as well. So that is the video for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you again next time. Bye for now.